Hello, Ramesh. Uh, I made this video to help get you started with R and R Markdown and Rstudio. Okay. By the time you finish, if you follow along with this video and you complete the report which I sent you, you'll know 80 to 90% of what you know to produce any R Markdown report. Okay. All right. So let's start up Rstudio. Now, just to make sure we're on the same page here. Okay. This environment here is called Rstudio. Rstudio is what is called an IDE or integrated development environment. It's basically a glorified text editor. Okay. The second thing I want you to notice about this is that I'll just say at this point that your installation should consist of 3 parts on Windows: R programming language, Rstudio, and R Tools 4.0. Now, the fact that some of your code is running tells me that your system is correctly installed. But let's take a look very briefly here at Rstudio. My studio is set up so I have, well, so my window has 4 panes, okay? And each pane contains tabs. Upper left-hand corner, this is my editor pane. This is where I write my code. These tabs up here are the names of various documents I've made in R. If you come down here, you can see environment. Environment is where you're going to see all the variables and data frames that you've created. You can click on this down here and see the field types, the field names, and the field types. It also will tell you the number of rows and the number of variables or columns in the data frame. I will mention that variables and columns are also sometimes called features. Okay. You can also click on the DF here, and you can display the data frame, okay, in your editor window. All right. But what I want you to notice over here, look for a tab that says console. When you first start up R, it should say something like R version. My R version is 4.0.4, which is the latest version, but this tells us that, okay? There's also a plots will display, history commands, viewer, okay? But up here, the output from your commands will run normally. But when you're running R Markdown scripts, a tab will open up that says R Markdown, and it will display all the messages, errors, and so forth when you run your R Markdown. Okay. Next, I want to talk about libraries and packages. Okay. I think we pretty much got all these down to here installed. Hopefully, make sure you got all these installed. But how do we install a package? Well, actually, before we install packages, one more thing I want you to do, and I want you to do this every morning when you first turn on when you first start up R. Click on Update. Now, if I had packages to be updated, there'd be a list here. And then if I had packages listed there, I would click Select All, then Install Updates. It's very important that you keep your system up to date, okay? Now, if you get a message that says, do you want to install from source? Answer yes. Now, when you install in packages, watch the console window for error messages, okay? It has to do with the install, okay? Now, the File Directory tab will show you the files in your current working directory. Facebook, Ramesh, Nadal, RF Tools, okay? That's how you know where your files are. If you look, there's also a tab that says Tutorials. So you can actually take tutorials within R itself, okay? So now let's talk a moment about R Markdown. There's two. You can click R, come down to R Markdown this way. Notice that it says title, your name. This is the format. You want words, so come down and click on Word. Then when you click OK, it gives you a sort of a template for R Markdown files, okay? You would then click the the floppy disk button and name it. Now notice when you work with Rmarkdown, the extension is capital R M lowercase d, and that tells Rstudio and R that you're using Rmarkdown. Interesting enough, you do not have to call the Rmarkdown package within Rmarkdown itself, which is so interesting. So now we got there's 3 packages I want you to install now. The dlookr. So we're going to come down to packages, click R, enter the package name, and click install. Now once again, when you install this package, just watch for error messages in the console. Okay? So we install lookr, dt, and flex table. Okay? Now we got a nice Rmarkdown document here. Here's our header, the output's PDF. In the first section it says setup, I load all of our libraries, packages. The headers are marked by hash marks. You can do 1, 2, 3, or 4 hash marks. One hash mark is the largest heading name. Notice there's a space before and after the heading. Hashtag title. This is just plain text I cut and pasted in. That's one way to control text. Okay. Another way you can do it, if you want to bolt a list, you can use hashtag or it's an asterisk again with the space before and after is an asterisk followed by the name of the list object. Okay. Now, notice here, you got 3 backticks. That's the ticks underneath the escape key with R enclosed in curly brackets. At the bottom of your code chunk, there's 3 backticks. This in Rmarkdown, this is called a code chunk. Okay, a code chunk. All right. This helps you load. I will point also in Rmarkdown Word style document, each header creates a new page, I believe. Okay. So now we got our first code chunk. We're reading the data file. This function is interesting. This comes from the janitor package. And this is what this does is really pretty amazing. This drops any column or variable that doesn't have any data in it. It may simply be what's called an NA or not available. Well, in the case of the package here it drops 20 columns. The column count goes from 71 to 51. Okay? You got 20 columns without it's empty data. All right? Which is a very good function to use. But if any of the columns has 1 data in it, it won't drop it. So we read the data, remove the blank columns, and then we take the 3 date fields and convert them to date types. Okay? Now here's our first heading. So this is going to create a new page. Now what we're doing here is we're using the select statement from dplyr, and it's saying include all the columns from age DDD to column weight. Then we're going to use the dlookr package to create some summary statistics diagnosed. So this function here only analyzes the numeric fields. It's going to produce summary statistics. The flex table from the flex table package formats in a nice outputted table format. The second code chunk is this. Again, the code chunks, okay? We're going to create a new feature, a new variable. You know, the fancy word for what I'm doing here is called feature engineering. You're engineering new features. In this case, we're going to create a new feature called smoking group. We use an if-else statement to evaluate you think the double equal sign means evaluate or compare the smoking variable to 0. And if the smoking variable is 0, you're going to put no in the smoking group. If it's not 0, you're going to put an unknown in the smoking group. And now you're going to say if the smoking equals 1, you're going to put yes. If it doesn't equal 1, you're simply going to go and write the old smoking column thing, which will be either no or unknown, okay? Now we're going to use another function dplyr called group by and summarize. We're going to create a new data frame called smokers. So we're taking df and we're passing it to this function here. We're going to do a group by the smoking group. So I want to put the data frame. It contains 3 rows: smoking, non-smoke, yes, no, and unknown. Okay? The summarize function performed this function. The function we're performing here is a count function. So we're creating a count function called count. Then we're going to plot this smokers table down here, okay? Another chunk, right? Remember the chunk codes here. ggplot, this is the data frame we want to plot. We want to produce a column plot. Now, you ask, what is geom underscore error bar? Well, now it's time to introduce the now we want to come to the point of how to look up information, how to get information about commands. Okay, I just loaded all the libraries. In order for a function to work, you have to load the library first. So now here's the question: what is a now? First thing, if you type g underscore okay, so you ask, what is geom error bar? Well, if you want to find out what geom column is, you cut the help function is invoked with the question statement. So we want to say, well, what is geom underscore error bar? Vertical intervals, lines, crossbars, and error bars. Various ways of representing vertical interval defined by x, y min, and y max. Each case draws a single graphical object. Remember the object in the plot that you showed me? Those things that look like eyes, capital I's with a dot in the middle, those are error bars, okay? If you're not sure what error bars are, you need to Google them, okay? Google will tell you what error bars are, all right? Now, the question, what are kind of plots? Here's the other thing, you see. geom underscore gives you a list of all of the various plot types you can do. Let's say you want a box plot. You would use the geom underscore box plot. Let's say you wanted, geom crossbar may be, let's don't confuse things too much. Okay. Let's say you want to do a histogram. You use geom underscore histogram. Let's say you wanted to do a scatter plot. Well, a scatter plot is geom underscore point. Okay. That's what this is. So this here is geom underscore and call is a column plot. It's an easy way to create a bar plot. The next part of the R code is what's called the AES function. You can tell it's a function because it has open and closing brackets, okay? So notice we're going to have 2 open and closing brackets, one for the call, one here, and two closing brackets over here. Now, inside this is called aesthetics, okay? The aesthetics will always consist of 2 variables, an x and a y variable. Remember, as you know, the x variable is a horizontal axis, labels. Okay, the actual values put on the horizontal vertical axis are called labels in R. Okay, very important to remember that. So on the x-axis, we're going to plot the smoking group, yes, no, and unknown. On the y-axis, we're going to plot the count for these 2 groups. So we have a bar plot with 3 plots. Now I'm using a scale underscore y underscore log 10 because it makes the plot look a little more understandable. If you don't know what log 10 means, okay, well, you need to Google logarithmic scales. You need to go to YouTube and look up logarithmic numbers or logarithmic scales or log 10 scales, okay? So this actually creates the plot. Whenever you want to notice when you connect two parts of the plot commands, you use plus. Okay, it's not the, it should be a pipe, but when when the author of this wrote that, he decided to use pluses. Okay, so now the last part of this command is a labs command. This is where you can define. This is where you can create a title, as I got here. Y equals, in this case, helps. It gives us the name for the y-axis. So you can see the y-axis here is going to be total number of women. I put a note here. This is log 10. Okay. Again, it's the code chunk. Now, how do you create a blank chunk? A blank code chunk. There's two ways. Come up here, okay, where you see the C sign. Click the down there, and there's R. Now you got a code chunk. The other shortcut is you can do Control Alt and I, and it'll do the same thing. Okay. So now I just given you 80 to 90% of what you need to create every single, to not only finish that report, but also to create any report you need to know. Every report is going to contain these same functions: libraries, data read, data cleaning, and feature engineering, and data visualizations. Okay? Now, let's take a look at some more features. Let's take a look at where we are over here. Notice this plot. Notice this here. This is an RMD. This is an Rmarkdown. Now, we're going to come down here, and this is where we left off. This is plan of exicity. Again, this is all feature engineering. Okay? Notice, if you go back and you look at the sample code, you can see most of that code is feature engineering. You have 100 or so lines of code that simply creates new features. Okay? Remember, a feature is a variable, is a variable or a column name. Okay? So what I want you to do now, first of all, run this code as it is. Okay? Okay? And here's a Word document. This is the title. This is a level 1 single hashtag thing, single hashtag heading. This is plain text. This is the bulleted list. Okay? Now, this doesn't look quite right because you can see that you got a space here. But anyway, so here's the second thing. Okay, I made a mistake. What it does, it prints one chunk per page, apparently. Okay, so this is remember that flex table statement. This is what that is. Notice this was the first column followed by a colon and the weight column. So it created a table, summary table, all the columns between the first and the weight table. Now, minimum, quartile, Q stands for quartile or percentile, mean, median, Q3, mix, 0. Now, if you don't know what any of these columns mean, if you don't know what these, then you need to use the help function, and you need to use Google to find out what these columns mean. Because the last thing you need is for your professor to ask you, what's the Q1 column? And you don't know what it is. Okay? I will say that quantile, these are very important. You know, sometimes I think mean is also referred to as Q2 maybe, or maybe it's median. Sometimes the median variable is a very important variable in statistics, okay? Now you can get a quick understanding of what all these mean by doing what? Well, if we do a question, this will come down and this will tell you what the arguments stand for. Outliers, count of outliers, minus, count of minus values, 0, count of zero values, okay? So if you have a data set and there shouldn't be any negative numbers in there, and you get a count for minus, then you know you got a problem with your data, right? Make sense? Good. So again, so there's our table. Then we came down, and here's our plot. Okay. Notice that each chunk creates a new. Well, is that right? Okay. Let's try one more thing. Let's just put a new chunk. Okay, so what it is, let's try some here. So what it does is each chunk, let's make sure, I think each chunk creates a new page. Let's find out here. Okay. Well, I'm not quite sure what causes it. Honestly, at this point, I'm not quite sure what causes a page break. I will say you can force a page break by putting \new page. That should force a page break. So now you got 80% of the information you need to finish your report. Remember, the most important thing is this. So what I want you to do at this point, I want you to come over and finish this report using this code here. I should have sent you this code already. Remember, you're going to start at line 57 with the plot of ethnicity. All you have to do is come here and cut and paste this code chunk underneath here. Remember, you got to have a space before and after the title, okay? That's all you have to do, to come down and recreate all these plots all the way down to here by simply cutting and pasting into chunks, all right? Okay? What else have I got here? If you don't know what error bars are, look it up, okay? Look it up. Google error bars, all right? So that concludes this very, very brief video. And once you finish this video, once you finish your code, I'm going to say it again, you will know 80 to 90% of what you need to do to create any analysis report. The tricky part is, of course, this part right here, because this is all data engineering. What you're doing, you're creating a bunch of new columns and new features. And that's the tricky part. Okay? Okay. So again, watch the video maybe 2 or 3 times, and then complete this intro report right here using the code from over here. Okay? And I want you to finish this video and this report before you contact me again. Okay? Because you should be able to. You need to understand how to do this on your own. Alrighty.